I like the part where Kamala Khan said the movie's title within the movie. And I'm back at it again after a months-long hiatus for another movie review. Another Marvel one, who would have thought? This time, The Marvels. In this one, returning characters Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau from WandaVision, and Kamala Khan / Miss Marvel from her self-titled series return to team up against a galactic threat threatening to destroy the universe. With a collection of bangles, one that she found on a distant planet, and others belonging to the young Pakistani teen, which she wants to use to help her home planet at the risk of endangering the rest of the universe. Now, I'm not going to talk about all the outside discussions and controversies behind this and the risks of it. I'm just here to talk about my own stuff. If you want to hear something that goes into more in-depth about that stuff, there's a million ways to find it on YouTube. But for me, what did I think of it? It was fun, and I know one can call me shill, but there are some stuff I've criticized in the past. But anyway, it was fun, but it was definitely a mixed bag. Which I'll get to more on the negatives later. Because for sure, this is the type of movie that is really hard to dislike. Plenty can find it to be just average or just another typical movie, but I can't see anyone outright hating it unless they're trying to be a purposeful hater. But anyway, for the good stuff that helps this in its benefit, for sure, the main thing that the marketing has focused on, and is definitely true here, is the chemistry between the three leads. Because it seems like they were perfectly made to work together comedically, dynamically, and emotionally, because every time they're together, you just wish it could go on as long as they can. In fact, I would like another movie with these three together, just because of how their chemistry is off the chart. Another thing which I can praise for it is the visuals. It's definitely more creative and inventive and more colorful than the last one. So there's some stunning shots that can be worth remembering for a while, so I can appreciate them going to the effort for this one. And for sure, I did say it was fun, and with that, it already makes it better than the first movie, because personally, the first movie, that was okay, but kind of my least favorite movies in the entire MCU. But I'm glad that this was an improvement, because I felt there was no way for it to be worse unless they did it on purpose. But they certainly tried to make something fun and enjoyable here. Because for sure, this is a fun movie. For some, it might be enough. For me, it was, because I don't know, I like having fun. I'm a positive guy. The CGI is 90% good, because when it looks good, it looks good. For the last 10%, it does look noticeable, but it's nowhere near as flawed or as weird as that of Quantumania and Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm going to mention those two movies a lot, but to move on. Also, the set design is pretty good, because each location has its own unique identity that makes it stand out and feel lived in. So every time you actually get to visit a location with sets and props, I know the usual stuff, it's done pretty well, and it just gives it all like a more dynamic energy. For sure, the characters, like I mentioned earlier, prop this up to what could have been something average or pretty mediocre, but makes it better. Because for sure, all these characters, the main cast, aside from one, which I'll get to, is pretty charismatic and memorable and stands out. And that includes Kamala Khan's family, like her mom, dad, and her older brother are in this, and they have a decent amount of screen time, mostly for comic relief. But I'm glad that they were included instead of just being forgotten. I know that her friends Bruno and Nakia don't appear, but except as photos in the background. And also, I'm happy to say that Kamala Khan, thanks to Iman Vellani, is one of the highlights of the movie. Yeah, I liked her a lot in the show. The show I thought was good, but also a mixed bag, because there's some stuff I loved about it and stuff I really didn't like about it. So it's like a low 8 out of 10. But anyway, back to this. Your appreciation for this character just depends on if you can tolerate nerdy teen characters, because of course not everyone's going to be into that, because some don't even like lighthearted teenage characters, because some will only care about fictional teens if their stories are dark and heavy or edgy and satirical. But yeah, she's a highlight, thank goodness. She's a highlight. She's going to be a highlight for many as well. Also, the directing, the direction is pretty solid. It doesn't over rely on like quick cuts, to an extent, and lets the energy flow on its own and gets you sucked into the good parts more than it could have been with someone else or someone inferior. Also, the action scenes are pretty good. Also better than the first. I know because, in the story, because of a coincidence, the three leads end up switching locations every time they use the powers at the same time. So that's an issue they had to overcome throughout the narrative. And also gives Carol a chance to be nerfed. So it forces her to get more creative to solve her problems instead of the usual flying and destroying everything. So yeah, the action scenes also elevate the story, elevate the movie, because it could have easily been typical and lazy, but they make it stand out. And that's one reason worth watching it, is for the action. And also, this movie is, I say, out of the flawed movies, it's definitely one of the funnier movies in recent MCU memory. Because I'll say this, out of the very flawed MCU movies, this is one of the better ones. I know. And it's also just very genuine and charming and likable and innocent. So I just can't really dislike it that much. But yeah, this movie has some creative humor. It fits for the characters. It's not out of place. No one's ruined. The existing characters are like how they act. It was like Nick Fury is more goofy in this one than in Secret Invasion, but it's not out of character for what he said in this one. But I guess now it's hard for me to get to the complaints. The biggest one, and that I 100% agree with, is the villain, because Dar-Benn might legitimately be almost in the top tier of like worst MCU villains, because she's generic. She's kind of boring. When there's scenes with her, you just want to go back to the main characters. She has an alright motivation, which is, again, trying to save her planet and using the Bangles to open portals, jump points, to bring water and resources to her planet. But I really can't get into it when she's just written so basically. So yeah, she's not a reason to rewatch at all if it bothers some too much. And since she has a lot of screen time, it does kind of drag it down. And it had potential because it's an alright motivation. It could have had something more to say on it, but they didn't go for it. They went the most easiest, predictable option possible with her. And Zawe Ashton deserved better. And also, the music is also pretty okay. It's also better than the first, but with some nice rhythms and beats here and there, but overall it's not a memorable score. Because the composer of this movie worked on Ms. Marvel, and the music in that one was better than here. It's weird that they didn't even use her Kamala's themes here. But yeah, the other big issue is that the plot is very messy. It keeps it's more in the first half than the second half, but it keeps jumping from scene to scene to scene with no real flow. it couldn't feel it didn't feel natural in the way it keep jumping from thing to thing and plot development to plot development. Um, Even weirdly enough, there's some bits that feel like there was an extra story that happened in between movies and shows, but we never saw it. So when they reference it, it's like, could we see more of this thing that happened? Because they show very little of it, but they don't show more. So it just feels kind of flat and underwhelming. There could have been more to what this extra story was, but they didn't go into it, which just brought it down into like the compelling factor. Also, wait, to back a bit on the humor, it's gonna be kind of all over the place. There was a gag with Flurkins during the third act, which is so hilariously dark it feels like it would come out of a James Gunn movie. But anyway, back to the complaints. This makes the pacing feel awkward and doesn't feel the stakes are there, but doesn't feel as grand as it could have. And for sure, this is the shortest MCU movie, and you can definitely feel it. Cause yeah, it goes by really fast. It's sometimes a little too fast. Because yeah, there is a near perfect correlation that in recent times, longer MCU movies have been some of the best ones because they had time to develop themes, characters, and story. While the shorter ones just feel very rushed and felt like some things could have been changed or some things could have been longer. Because the pacing is also off here because there's some scenes that go on too shortly and others go on too long. So yeah, if they were longer, it could have done more with the potential that was there to be great. But as it is, it's good because there are some things saving it. And as usual, the typical complaint, and I feel even some of the good stuff has it, it's very rare when an MCU production doesn't have unneeded jokes. Because of course there'll be the few that don't need to be there, but they were there because they wanted to entertain the audience. But what can one do? Because out of the flawed MCU movies of recent times, I'd put it slightly under Multiverse of Madness, but certainly above Quantumania and Love and Thunder, because the more I think about those movies, I still like them, but I kind of like them less now. But that's what can one do in this situation? I don't work there. I don't know the people who complain. But now I get to the spoilers, which I'll give a few seconds for. So yeah, this story is pretty typical. There are no big surprises. Like, there are surprises, but they're nowhere near some of the best. It's very serviceable, depending on what one is looking for, because this is the kind of movie that half would go, "Oh, that was so generic," while others could say, "That was so much fun," or "That was awesome." So it really does depend on what one is looking for, and depends on just how a person acts towards these movies. And also, in the third act, there was an incursion, but it could have also felt more impactful. It was weirdly short, as rushed as the other stuff. And also, Captain Marvel having a binary form could also been more grand. Yeah, this whole movie could have been more grand and epic, but they went something with the bare minimum. Even though it is likable enough, in a sense. Because, yeah, the three main characters are good. And even with Carol herself, I say she's pretty good. And of course, I made the joke before that I think Carol is better everywhere else except in her first movie. Because I can see where others are coming from with that, but I liked her in Endgame. I liked her in Shang-Chi, I liked her in What If, and I liked her here quite a bit more. So yeah, I think now I kind of like the character now. And I do want to see more, because now Brie Larson is allowed to to express more emotion than she could have otherwise. So I just hope she keeps getting the opportunities. I know she is planning to be a major character. and I hope they keep on that promise. Try to find new ways to explore her character and advance her and make her a top tier character if they can achieve it, because I think it's possible. I just wish the best for them in trying harder. But I like what we got. But speaking of underwhelming factors, even the villain's death is pretty underwhelming. Like, she gets the bow bangle, she kind of gets to do what she wants, but then the energy is too much, and then she dies by exploding. But it just feels so abrupt and sudden. Like, if it didn't feel natural, it felt like there was something missing when her sacrifice. But it just felt like nothing. Because, yeah, what the heck? Also, the Kree Skrull conflict was such a background thing that I'm just surprised why even make it such a deal. I know that's why Dar-Benn acts the way she was. She wants peace of sorts, just so she can like help her planet, and she was being selfish. But it just feels like nothing. It's kind of like dropped halfway through the movie. But the one thing I will appreciate, and I know some not, but I did, was that it did have some cameos, which for some might be like too much, too weird, but or too short or unnecessary. But I guess for me, it just makes this universe feel more believable and lived in, because by having these characters with these actors appear, even if just for like a couple minutes, it means they're not gone, that they're still around, that Marvel still knows they exist. So yeah, that's just me. Because the first cameo that happens halfway is Valkyrie from the Thor movie that helps the Skrulls find a new home. So I was glad to see her there. And the other big cameo that happens right at the very end is none other than Kate Bishop from Hawkeye, played by Hailee Steinfeld. So, hooray! Fans of hers, including myself, got to see her pretty soon, which means Marvel hasn't forgot about her, and she probably will reappear later on, whether it's a grand finale or some Young Avengers project. I'm glad that they'll keep using her. And also, we get the dog, Lucky. I think Lucky, the pizza dog. And the post-credit scene. This movie only actually has one post-credit scene, the one after the first credits. And really enough, the scene with Kamala trying to recruit Kate to the Young Avengers does kind of feel tacked on to the end. And it could have easily been a post-credit scene of its own, but I guess they really wanted people to see the first one and didn't want people to skip it for a good reason. So I guess I kind of accepted the Kate Bishop scene being a bit tacked on. But anyway, this is such a big deal that I kind of wish I couldn't say it here, but I have to because it's a spoiler segment and others already know about it too. But during the third act, Monica gets trapped to another universe because Dar-Benn's attack ends up ripping a hole in the space-time continuum of sorts, which opens a gateway to another universe, and Monica closes it from the other side so that he could save the universe. But in that other universe, she wakes up in the hospital bed, and first of all, ends up finding that universe's Captain Marvel, which is Monica's own mom, because for sure this is not the same Maria Rambeau's Captain Marvel that was in Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, because if he was wearing a different outfit and she's not dead. But the other big reveal is that she was accompanied by Beast from the X-Men, played by the same actor from The Last Stand, but this time in CGI form instead of makeup. So Monica was trapped in a separate universe where the X-Men exist. So it might be foreshadowing Deadpool 3. Maybe she could appear. But for sure, the plot point of her being trapped in another universe with other superheroes is definitely going to play a part later on. Maybe she'll make it back to the main universe. Or maybe she'll tell everyone in the other universe what happened to her so they can work together. Or maybe they'll start a war. Or maybe have set up something for Kang the Conqueror. Who knows? And the possibilities are exciting. For sure, they're going to follow up on this one. And I hope people get excited. I know some will think it's forced, but I hope it gets some excited for the possibilities of the future MCU and the grand finale coming 3 years from now. And despite what some might say, my room was nearly packed. 85% of it was packed, and 70% of those consisted of families with kids and teens, rather than the typical superhero nerds, which is nice to see. And they were having a good time with the jokes and the action, the characters. Because I'll say the character development is there, but it's very basic. Which, I don't know, could have been worse, but at least it gives the characters a time to shine and makes me like them more than before, and gives us a nice direction to head to for the future. I liked it pretty well. I could joke about being peak cinema all day, but it was a decent but flawed movie. Not sure how it would work on rewatches. I have to think about it. But I had a good time. A long time ago, I had a score for the first Captain Marvel being a 65 out of 100, and I gave this one a 76. Which, I know it's lower than other scores, but I did say I dislike those more than now. So by default, it gives this one an edge, because this is like an in-the-middle MCU movie. Out of the new stuff that's come out, it's not one of my favorites, but it's not one of the worst, which is fine enough for me. So, higher, further, faster, together, baby. See you guys on the next one.